She stood on the sidewalk, hands shaking, 3 children crying behind her. "I told you, they're mine," she screamed. But the officer didn't blink. "Ma'am, we got a call. You don't match the description." He meant her skin. He meant her face. He meant they were too light to be hers. Handcuffs clicked while her youngest sobbed. "Mommy, why are they taking you?" And across the street, the woman who called just stood there, holding her Starbucks cup, smiling. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching us from. A Tuesday afternoon in Atlanta. Hot. Busy. Normal. Danielle Monroe had just picked up her kids from school, Isaiah, 10, Layla, 7, and Malik, 4. It was their ice cream day, a ritual after every spelling test. She parked near the corner shop, helped Malik out of his booster seat, and walked toward the entrance with the kids skipping ahead. She didn't notice the woman across the street, didn't see the phone raised, didn't hear the words. "I just saw a woman dragging 3 kids. I don't think they're hers." Danielle had heard the comments before. "Your kids are so light. Are they adopted? What does their father look like?" She had learned to smile through it. But this wasn't a comment. This was a report. Inside the store, she let the kids pick their cones, paid cash, smiled at the cashier. They stepped outside, and that's when she saw it. A police cruiser pulled up fast. Tires clipped the curb. Danielle didn't flinch. Why would she? Officer Barnes stepped out, hand on his belt. Eyes locked on her kids first. "Ma'am, can I speak with you?" "Sure. Is something wrong?" "Someone called about a possible abduction." "Excuse me?" "They said a woman matching your description was seen forcing kids into a vehicle." Danielle blinked. "Those are my children. I'm going to need to see ID. And there's 2. They're minors." "Then step over here." The kids started to fidget. "Mommy?" Isaiah asked. "It's okay, baby. Just stay close." Officer Barnes turned to his radio. "We've got a potential 10 to 14. Requesting backup." Danielle's heart dropped. 10 to 14. Suspicious person. Child involved. Another car pulled up. 2 more officers stepped out. She raised her voice. "They're my children. I just picked them up from school." Layla began to cry. Malik hid behind her leg. "We need to confirm, ma'am." "Confirm what?" "That you're their legal guardian." "I'm their mother." A crowd had gathered now. Phones out. One officer took Isaiah aside. "What's your name, son?" "Isaiah Monroe." "Is that your mom?" "Yes." "Let me go." Danielle stepped forward. And that's when Barnes grabbed her arm. "That's enough. Turn around." "Are you serious?" The cuffs were cold. Fast. Public. The kid screamed. Danielle shouted. Across the street, the woman who called watched from behind her sunglasses. No expression. Just a sip of coffee. Danielle was put in the back seat. The kids were kept on the sidewalk. Alone. As the sirens faded, no one asked them if they were hungry. No one asked if they were okay. No one asked anything. Because to those officers, they didn't look like hers. At the precinct, she wasn't processed. She wasn't even booked. They just kept her in a side room. For clarification. For waiting. 3 hours. Without water. Without a call. And when they finally asked for documents, she gave them what they never checked: school forms, medical files, birth certificates. All matching. All in her name. Still, they stared at her like she was a liar. And not once did they say the word sorry. 3 hours. That's how long Danielle sat in a locked interview room at the 8th precinct. She was never handcuffed to the chair. Never formally charged. But they kept her there anyway. Long enough for the humiliation to settle in her skin. At one point, she stood up to knock on the door. "Sit down, ma'am," came the voice from the other side. No clock. No updates. No rights read. Just silence. Finally, someone entered. Detective Hale. White. Tall. Looked more like a politician than an investigator. He didn't sit. "We've reviewed the situation. The children are with child services for the time being. Standard protocol." Danielle's heart punched her ribcage. "You took my kids?" "Until verification is complete. You have their school forms. Their birth certificates. My name is on everything. We're not disputing that. But we have a process." Danielle stood. "Where are they?" He didn't answer. "I want to speak to a supervisor." "That won't change procedure." Her voice cracked. "I want my children. I want them now." He turned to the door. "Someone will be in shortly." He left. 10 more minutes passed. Danielle sat again, hands clenched in her lap, mind racing. She thought about Isaiah. How he always held Malik's hand when they crossed the street. How Layla hated the dark unless she could sleep near her mom. What were they thinking right now? That she abandoned them? What were the officers saying to them? And worst of all, what were the kids starting to believe? The door opened. A new voice. A woman this time. Social worker. Neutral tone. Ms. Monroe, we've spoken with your children. They're physically fine. A little shaken. We're arranging transport to reunite you shortly. Danielle stood instantly. So I can go? The woman hesitated. The release is conditional. We need written proof of primary custody. And an address match. Danielle blinked. You had everything. In my purse. My ID. My lease. Their school IDs. Those items are being verified. Danielle exhaled through her nose. Let me guess. The woman who called, she's gone, isn't she? The social worker didn't answer. Danielle laughed. Bitter, quiet. You put my kids in a van. Treated me like a criminal. And you're not even going to tell me your name? That information is confidential. So is being a mother. But you stripped me of it in 30 seconds. Silence. Where are they? The woman finally relented. They're at the juvenile intake center on Peachtree. Separate rooms. Supervised. Danielle closed her eyes. Separate? Yes. It's standard. She whispered, more to herself than to the worker. This will change them. The woman tilted her head. What? Danielle looked up, calm now. Flat. You think this ends when I get them back? She stepped forward. You just made me a story they'll carry forever. Danielle sat in the waiting area of the juvenile intake center. Plastic chairs. Fluorescent lights. No windows. A laminated sign read, no food. No phone calls. No shouting. She had been sitting for 46 minutes. Every few minutes, a uniformed staffer would walk past. No eye contact. No update. Just the steady rhythm of indifference. Finally, a man in khakis and a badge appeared. Ms. Monroe? She stood. Come with me. He didn't introduce himself. Didn't explain the process. Just led her down a hallway of doors. You'll see them one at a time. Facility rules. I want them together. That's not possible. He opened the first door. Malik. Tiny, 4 years old. Curled up on a bench. Tear-stained face. When he saw her, he ran. She dropped to her knees and caught him. Mommy. He held her like she was life itself. She kissed his forehead over and over. I'm here. I'm here, baby. I never left. Behind them, the man waited. 2 minutes. She didn't waste a second. She held Malik's face in her hands. Did they hurt you? He shook his head. Where's Layla? Danielle's throat burned. I'll see her next. The man knocked once. Time. She stood. Carried Malik to the door. He screamed when she handed him off. I want mommy. I want mommy. His voice echoed down the hallway. Next, Layla. She sat stiff on a plastic chair, arms crossed, eyes red. Didn't run. Didn't speak. Danielle knelt. Baby. Layla looked up. They said you were lying. About what? About being our mom. Danielle swallowed. That's not true. I told them. But they just kept asking. Over and over. Danielle reached for her. Layla didn't move. Did I do something wrong? She whispered. Danielle pulled her into her arms. Never. The knock came again. Time. Danielle stood. This time, Layla didn't let go. The man had to gently peel her away. And then Isaiah. He stood when she entered. Taller than the others. But his eyes, wide, uncertain. Mom. Baby. He stepped forward. Then stopped. They showed me paperwork. Birth records. Photos. Said they had to check everything. I know. They asked me if I'd ever seen you hurt us. Danielle's heart dropped. What? I told them no. But they kept asking. He clenched his fists. Why do they think we don't belong to you? She couldn't answer. Because she didn't know how to explain a system that never saw her as a mother. Only as a possibility. She kissed his forehead. I'm getting us out of here. Soon. The knock came. But this time, she didn't move. 2 more minutes, she said. The man hesitated. She didn't break eye contact. He stepped back. Isaiah sat beside her. Quiet. Danielle held his hand. And in that silence, she made a promise. Not out loud. Not to him. To herself. They will never do this to us again. Danielle sat across from a case officer named Miss Kellerman. Thin-rimmed glasses. Tablet in hand. A soft tone that made the words hit even harder. Based on the report filed and the escalation at the scene, your custodial rights will be placed under temporary review. Danielle blinked. Temporary? It's procedural. 30 days. You're telling me I can't take my children home? You'll retain supervised visitation during the evaluation. Danielle's voice dropped. Supervised. For what crime? Kellerman didn't blink. There was a public safety call. Officers responded to what they believed was a potential abduction of my own children. We understand that now. But you're still treating me like I'm dangerous. Kellerman folded her hands. It's about perception, not guilt. You understand. Danielle leaned forward. What I understand is that some woman made a phone call, never gave a name, never followed up. And now I'm being treated like a threat to the people I carried, birthed, raised. Kellerman didn't argue, because the system didn't need to justify itself. It only needed to follow its own paper trail. That night, Danielle sat on her couch. Alone. The house was too quiet. Toys untouched. Shoes by the door, still lined up. 3 backpacks on hooks, untouched since Monday. She scrolled through her phone. Text after text from friends. You okay? I saw what happened. That video. Anything I can do? But no one called. Not one person came to the door. Everyone supported her safely. Danielle opened her laptop. Searched. Racial bias family court Atlanta. Dozens of cases. Black mothers accused of neglect for being too tired. For missing a dentist appointment. For disciplining in public. For not looking the part. She clicked article after article. One quote hit her hardest. Systems don't apologize. They just shift the blame onto process. She closed the laptop. The next morning, she met with a court liaison. The woman handed her a packet of documents. These are the conditions for supervised visitation. A court-appointed monitor will be present. No physical discipline. No overnight custody. No bedtime stories? Not for now. Danielle bit her lip to keep from screaming. The woman kept reading. Your children are currently placed with a temporary foster caregiver. Danielle's eyes narrowed. What? It's standard. To avoid further trauma, we separate them from the accused party. Accused of what? The liaison didn't answer. Danielle stood. You want trauma? Try separating 3 siblings who've never spent a night apart. Try putting them in a stranger's house after arresting their mother in front of them. Ms. Monroe, I understand your frustration. No, you don't. She leaned over the table. But you will. Because you're about to see what happens when the only thing standing between your process and my children is me. Danielle hadn't touched her degree in 12 years. It sat in the back of her closet, inside a leather portfolio. Still smelled like printer ink. She had framed it once, then taken it down. Life moved too fast. But now it lay open on her table. Juris Doctor, Howard University, 2009. She wasn't just a mother. She was a lawyer. She hadn't practiced since the kids were born. Bar status inactive. But her mind had never stopped working. Contracts, custody rulings, language games, they were muscle memory. And this system? It was about to meet the part of her they didn't see. She began that night. Downloaded the Georgia Juvenile Code. Scanned every line about emergency custody transfer, racial bias complaints, and procedural timelines. Found what she needed. Section 15-11-30.1. Illegal detention of a child without cause. Then another. Section 19-9-3A3. Best interest of the child standard. She opened her email. Wrote a request to the clerk's office. Demanded expedited hearing review. Then drafted a complaint. Not emotional. Not dramatic. Precise. Every timestamp. Every violation. Every missing report. No adjectives. Just law. When she finished, it was 3:12 a.m. She sat back, rubbed her face, and remembered the voice of that officer. You don't match the description, she whispered. That's because you weren't looking for a lawyer. By sunrise, she filed the documents in person. The clerk blinked at her name. You're representing yourself? Yes. You're Monroe? The mother from? Yes. A pause. This is solid. Danielle didn't smile. She just walked out. That afternoon, she arrived at the supervised visitation center. Her kids were already there. In a small white room with toys no one touched. Malik ran to her instantly. Layla hesitated, then followed. Isaiah stood near the window, watching. A court-appointed monitor sat in the corner. No touching unless they initiate, she reminded. Danielle nodded. She let them come to her. Held each of them. Kissed their heads. Then she pulled out 3 envelopes. What's that? Isaiah asked. Letters. To you. Layla opened hers. Inside, a printed photo of the 3 of them on a beach. A year ago. Before any of this. On the back, one sentence. No one else decides who we are. Isaiah read his twice. Then looked at his mother. Are we going home soon? Danielle held his gaze. We're going to fight. And this time, it's not just me. He nodded, then did something he hadn't done in days. He smiled. That night, the city attorney's office received a certified letter. Inside, Danielle's motion. The clerk flagged it for review. Underlined one line. The state removed 3 children from their legal mother based on a third-party assumption unsupported by evidence or due process. And at the bottom, filed pro se, Danielle Monroe, J.D. Thursday morning. Danielle received a phone call from an unfamiliar number. She answered out of instinct. Ms. Monroe? This is Assistant City Attorney Peter Lang. I'd like to schedule a conversation, not a hearing, just a conversation. She stayed silent. He continued. We reviewed your motion. It's clear you're very capable. I'd like to invite you to sit down with us, informally, and explore options that avoid litigation. Danielle's voice was ice. You mean options that avoid accountability? I mean outcomes that benefit everyone involved. My children aren't a negotiation. He chuckled gently. Of course not. But a public case. Well, that can get messy. You'd be in the spotlight. So would your kids. Sometimes privacy is more powerful than principle. Danielle didn't blink. Is that a warning? It's a suggestion. Let's meet tomorrow. 2 p.m. City Hall. Room 112. Click. She didn't say goodbye. The next day, she wore the only blazer she hadn't packed away after graduation. No makeup. No jewelry. Just authority. The receptionist at City Hall stared when she gave her name. Room 112 had no windows. Inside, Lang, 2 aides, and 1 woman from Child Protective Services. Lang stood. Ms. Monroe. Thank you for coming. May I call you Danielle? She sat. No. The CPS rep leaned forward. First, let me say how sorry we are for the confusion surrounding your children's custody status. You mean the illegal removal? The department acted on a report of possible endangerment. You acted on a lie. Lang stepped in. No one's disputing that you're their mother. The issue is whether this can be resolved without further strain on the system. Danielle placed a folder on the table. You mean without further embarrassment? Lang opened it. Inside, a copy of her bar admission, a timeline of events, and legal definitions of false report processing violations. Ms. Monroe. She interrupted. You wanted a quiet resolution? Here's mine. She pushed a second folder forward. Motion to petition the name of the original caller. Under Georgia Code 19-7-5E, I have the right to know who initiated the report that led to trauma against my family. Lang stiffened. That's not how it works. That's exactly how it works. I also filed a civil rights complaint this morning. Title VI violation. Racial bias in emergency service response. The room fell silent. Danielle leaned in. I'm not asking for apology. I'm demanding precedent. Lang's smile faded. This won't stay quiet, you know. Good. She stood. Let them hear it. Outside, her legs shook as she walked. Not from fear. From release. She had spent her entire adult life trying to not be the angry black woman. No? She was exactly what they deserved. And finally, she was no longer afraid of being seen. Monday, 8:04 a.m. The city attorney's office held a closed-door meeting. Small group. No press. No recordings. Peter Lang sat at the head of the table, pale. She's not backing down, he said. She filed the Title VI complaint. It went federal this morning. One aide shifted. Can we get ahead of it? Lang shook his head. She named names. Detailed the detainment. The kids being separated. Every step. It's airtight. Another voice. Can we settle? Lang hesitated. If she agrees. And if she doesn't? Silence. Then one woman spoke, low, careful. Then this becomes precedent. And every black parent who ever got stopped because their kids looked too light will cite Danielle Monroe. The room froze. Because that's what they were afraid of. Not her anger. Not her intelligence. But her visibility. Meanwhile, Danielle sat in a family court hallway. Fluorescent lights. A broken vending machine. Parents crying 2 benches down. She had filed her motion for emergency reunification. It was simple. Clean. Legally devastating. Opposing counsel arrived 10 minutes late. He didn't look at her. The judge called them in. Courtroom 3C. No jury. Just wooden benches and microphones. Danielle stood. Your Honor, I request immediate reunification based on the unlawful removal of my children without proper cause, and on the subsequent trauma caused by the state's own protocols. The state's attorney cleared his throat. The department followed standard. The judge interrupted. Counsel, I read the motion. I also watched the footage. The child, Malik, visibly says, Mommy, during the detainment. The attorney looked down. The judge turned back to Danielle. Do you intend to pursue this case beyond family court? She didn't blink. Absolutely. He nodded. Motion granted. Her breath hitched. She didn't cry. Not yet. The judge continued. Custody restored immediately. All prior limitations removed. And I suggest the city prepare for what's coming next. Gavel. Bang. It was done. On paper. But it didn't feel like a victory. Not yet. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. Someone had leaked the motion. Danielle stepped out and paused. Mics rose. Questions flew. She said only this. They didn't take my children because I was unfit. They took them because I didn't look like who they expected to see. Then she walked away. No podium. No press conference. Just her kids waiting in a van around the corner. When she opened the door, they ran into her arms. Isaiah first. Then Layla. Then Malik, clinging like he'd never let go again. Danielle whispered. Home. We're going home. For now. Because the real fight was just beginning. Tuesday, 11:17 a.m. The assistant from CPS emailed Lang 3 lines. Subject, case #A374, Monroe. Update, closed. Internal review pending. Lang stared at it. Closed, but not sealed. That meant anyone could FOIA it. Anyone could publish it. Anyone could ask why a licensed attorney and mother of 3 was handcuffed on a sidewalk because someone felt suspicious. By 3 p.m., the mayor's office had received 5 press inquiries. 1 national. Lang called the city spokesperson. What's our statement? We're drafting something neutral. It won't matter. If this goes federal. It already did. Lang's throat dried. You're sure? Civil Rights Division accepted the complaint this morning. Lang hung up without replying. He opened the Monroe folder on his desk. Inside, scanned school IDs, birth certificates, timestamps, incident reports. Everything they'd gathered to justify what happened. It all looked different now. Now, it looked like evidence. But not against her. Against them. At the precinct, Officer Barnes was called into a side room. 2 men in suits. Internal affairs. Not smiling. One laid out papers. Do you acknowledge using the phrase, you don't match the description, during the stop? Barnes squirmed. I meant, her story didn't match. That's not what's recorded. There was confusion. She showed ID. Had names. And your report omitted the words mother and school pickup. Why? No answer. The other agent spoke. You understand this is a liability case now? Barnes looked down. Am I being suspended? No reply. Just the sound of a recorder clicking off. Back in her kitchen, Danielle made grilled cheese for the kids. Malik giggled at the melted cheese stretch. Layla sorted crayons for a school project. Isaiah asked, Are they going to get in trouble? Danielle wiped her hands on a towel. That's not up to me anymore. She didn't say it, but she felt it. For the first time in days, her house felt like a home again. But her inbox was full. Lawyers, journalists, advocacy groups, even an invitation to speak at a conference. She deleted most of them, until she saw one subject line. Internal interview request, DOJ. She opened it. Simple message. We've reviewed your filing. We'd like your input in revising protocols for emergency child welfare stops. Your voice is needed. Danielle sat still for a long time. Not because she was unsure, but because she had waited years not for justice, but for someone to finally say, Your voice is needed. She clicked reply. Typed 2 words. Let's talk. Then closed the laptop. Not to rest. To prepare. Because now, they were listening. And she was just getting started. Thursday, 9 a.m. A gray federal building. 4th floor. Conference room C. Danielle entered without hesitation. 12 people sat around the table, attorneys, child welfare experts, DOJ compliance leads. She didn't shake hands. Didn't make small talk. Just opened her folder. I'm not here to relive the story. You've read it. They nodded. I'm here so this doesn't happen again. One woman leaned in. What changes do you propose? Danielle didn't flinch. 3. She slid over a printed memo. 1. No anonymous child endangerment report should trigger police action without initial CPS confirmation unless the child is in visible danger. A man across the table frowned. That slows emergency response. Good. Maybe they'll think before sending a cruiser to rip a child out of their mother's arms because of skin tone mismatch. Silence. She continued. 2. Require body cam footage to be filed with all juvenile interventions. If footage is missing, the case gets dismissed. Another voice. That'll expose officers to legal risk. Danielle stared. You say that like it's a problem. No one replied. She tapped the final bullet. 3. Every state-funded training program for CPS or police must include racial bias de-escalation modules, written by people who've lived it. The lead DOJ officer scribbled notes. Danielle paused, then added, This isn't just about fixing paperwork. It's about correcting instinct. Because the people who tore my family apart didn't follow protocol, they followed a feeling. A man cleared his throat. Would you be willing to help write these modules? Danielle looked up. I already did. She slid over a second folder. Drafts in there. It's called When They Don't Look Like Yours. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then the woman nearest her said quietly, We should have had you in this room years ago. Danielle shook her head. You had thousands of women like me. You just never listened. That evening, she came home to Layla building a pillow fort. Isaiah doing homework at the table. Malik asleep with his shoes still on. She watched them, heart full but heavy, because she knew something now. There would be other mothers, other sidewalks, other calls that start with, I don't think those are her kids. But maybe now, the system would pause. Just long enough to ask a better question. Maybe now, someone would remember her name. Not because she sued, but because she rewrote the form. She opened her inbox. The DOJ had already responded. Recommendations under review. Language being integrated. Training module accepted. She let out a slow breath. Then, for the first time in days, she smiled without pain. Because the damage had been done. But now, she was designing the exit wound, and it had her initials carved into it. 2 weeks later, Greenville Elementary held its first Family Justice Forum, a quiet event, no press, no politicians. Just parents, school staff, and community reps. A circle of chairs. A microphone no one touched. Until Danielle walked in. She wasn't scheduled to speak. But when the principal saw her, he stood. Ms. Monroe. Would you like to share? She paused, then walked forward. She didn't bring notes. Didn't bring her folder. She just looked at the faces in the room. Tired mothers, anxious teachers, 2 officers in the corner pretending to check their phones. And then she said, My name is Danielle Monroe. A few weeks ago, I was arrested in front of this school. My children were taken because I didn't look like their mother to someone driving by. She paused. I am their mother. She waited. No applause. No reactions. Just breath. She continued. I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here because this school let my kids walk out the door while I was in cuffs and no one stopped it. Not one adult stepped in. Not one teacher said, That's her. She's here every day. Someone in the back looked down. Danielle's voice stayed even. I don't blame you. That's the problem. We're so scared of getting it wrong, we forget that silence is getting it wrong. She stepped away from the mic, sat back down. Silence hung in the room. Then a father across the circle said, You're right, and nothing more. But it was enough. The next week, the school installed a new policy, Family Identification Registry. Photos, primary guardians, cross-verification with pickup logs. Not because of a lawsuit, because of her. And the next time Danielle came to pick up her kids, no one asked her to wait. No one asked for ID. A staff member smiled. They're in the art room. I'll walk you in. Danielle nodded. Thank you. She entered. Malik was finger-painting clouds. Layla held up a sketch of their house. Isaiah was reading, a book about Thurgood Marshall. He looked up, smiled. Ready? Danielle nodded. Always. They left hand in hand. No cameras. No reports. Just 4 people walking into sunlight. And behind them, taped to the glass door of the school, a flyer. Racial Equity Committee, Enrollment Open. Coordinator, D. Monroe. Meetings, Thursdays, 6 p.m. All welcome. Danielle never wanted fame. She wanted protection. For her children. For herself. For anyone who looked like her and dared to claim something as simple as, These are my kids. And now? She didn't have to ask permission. She had already written the answer.